So if we remember the residential red zone, or let's call it the former residential red zone, but it was created because houses couldn't be fixed on their own because of the land and the condition of the land and what happens to it in an earthquake. And we'll talk about that in a second, but it couldn't be done on its own. So in order to rebuild it, you need to do ground improvement works on an area wide, a large area basis, not just house by house. So from a technical point of view, it can be developed for houses or other uses like that again. That doesn't mean that it should be, and I know there's plenty of discussion that we need to have about what should happen in the future. But just saying from a technical point of view, it is possible to do that. So there's two things that we need to think about from a geotechnical point of view about how to create a stable building platform here. So the first one is the liquefaction. So in the residential red zone, one of its characteristics is there's not much distance between the ground surface and the water table below. So sometimes it's not very much at all. And so to be able to build a stable platform again, you want to make that as much as possible. So we will need to fill on top of the land and raise the land up so there's good distance and a good crust in between the ground surface and the water table. So that's the first thing. The second thing to think about is what happened in the earthquake is that because it liquefied underneath, that the crust on top, which was dry, started to laterally move, sideways move towards the river. And of course that's what we call lateral spread. And that's when the land really opened up and we've got those big cracks in there. And if you have a house on one of those cracks, well, it's not a good thing. So we would want to stop that happening. And there's various ways to do it, but perhaps one of the ways is putting in stone columns and columns to strengthen the ground alongside the river, and that stops that sideways movement. So there's engineering techniques that can be used to improve the land to make it suitable for building. So to do all those works, to put in the lateral spread protection and to fill it, it costs quite a bit of money, it's quite a bit of engineering and earthworks and all those sort of things. So one of the key questions that we need to understand is if we're even going to think about redevelopment and even have a conversation about whether that's right or wrong, we should work out whether it's even worth doing or not, because it can be quite expensive. That's one of the considerations, as well as all the others about what's the right thing and what's the biggest contribution this land can make to the future of Christchurch. From a geotechnical perspective, there's no constraints about using the land for, say, to make parks or wetlands or any of those types of uses like that. So it's pretty simple really. The land is there, it's fine. And obviously some soil types are going to, and where the groundwater is going to suit some things better than others. So for example, where the groundwater is high, particularly further down towards the coast, the wetlands are going to be more naturally suitable there. Water bodies is a really good question. So from small to very large, there's lots of ways to be able to create the water body. So from an engineering point of view, it's relatively straightforward. You dig a hole, there's water below our feet and it fills it up. Of course, we need to think about how to keep it clean, and there's lots of options for that. But from a geotechnical point of view, there's a couple of things to think about. First of all is if there are houses nearby, then by digging a hole, then we're creating that opportunity for lateral spread in an earthquake, and that wouldn't be a good thing. So if we do that, we either make it far enough away from houses to ensure that that doesn't happen, or we strengthen the land beside the water body to prevent that. And the other thing to think about in terms of creating a water body is if it fills up and it breaks out and there's a flood, where would that water go? And obviously we want it to go into the river and not into somebody's houses. So these are the things we need to think about. But from an engineering point of view, we can create small or large water bodies, but there's lots of other things to think about as well. So in summary, yeah, there's quite a few technical solutions and technical options to allow any of the different land uses that are possible to do in this land. Some of them are more expensive, and so the benefits have to follow and justify that cost. But from a engineering or technical perspective, you can do anything. The cost is, and the environmental effects obviously are the two things that we need to take into account. I think what we have here in the Ōtākaro Avon River Corridor is one of the greatest opportunities for Christchurch. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to get involved and we really want to hear people's ideas about how this land could be used to make Christchurch a better place to live, a better place to visit, a better place to work, and all those things that make up a whole life.